Know that prenatal stress and birth trauma are among some of the top reasons that babies struggle in the first years of life. Well, from colic to constipation to sleep struggles to torticollis or head shape issues, etc., a lot of these things end up being things that are rooted in stress experienced in utero or in the birthing process. And oftentimes, if this stress isn't addressed, we can see things turn more into in toddlers to sensory struggles, ADHD, anxiety, etc. And it can feel like a cycle that just feels never ending and trying to intervene, but really feeling like there's just more on top of it. And so ultimately, when we look at what is contributing to these, we see a common denominator of maternal stress throughout pregnancy. And this is so fascinating because when we talk about stress in baby, we're looking at three forms of stress. So we're looking at mental and emotional stress, we're looking at physical stress, and we're looking at environmental stress. Now, the mental and emotional stress for baby is maternal mental and emotional stress because we know that cortisol crosses the placenta. And so baby is directly related to mom's mental and emotional stress, in addition to baby co regulating off of mom in early years of life, and also then throughout childhood, mirroring, etc. And so we know that kids' mental and emotional stability is directly related to that of the parents. So, when it comes to anything, though, we see stress, stress, stress. Unfortunately, stress is the number one buzzword because we are figuring out that stress is related to everything. But how do we beat this? And how do we intervene? And how can we support? Now, one of the things that we want to focus on is focusing on the nervous system and how that plays a role in successful birth outcomes, as well as decreasing stress, etc., and setting not only baby up for success, but mom up for success. Because that's so cool. Because when we get to help support mom throughout pregnancy, we get to decrease mom's maternal stress throughout pregnancy. We get to support her body that directly impacts how much stress baby has. And that immediately sets baby up for better success. And not that I don't want to. I don't want to condone anyone for experiencing stress because, like I said, unfortunately, we're all experiencing the high levels of stress. And so it's not necessarily like it's mom's fault for experiencing stress. But by mom incorporating tools to help her body regulate and to decrease stress, we can set baby up for success. So one of the things, especially that we think about, is we think about the birthing process, and unfortunately, that there are a lot of birth interventions and what is considered birth trauma. And so when we see kiddos who have experienced birth trauma, we see them come in and they're struggling with colic, maybe eczema, maybe sleep challenges, or toddlers or elementary kids who are suffering from those other more advanced diagnoses like sensory processing or autism spectrum or OCD or ADHD, etc., where we're noticing some of these other things pop up. So, what if we could intervene and we could help decrease mental and emotional stress and therefore stress on baby early on to help set them up? And not saying that stress contributes or is the reason, the number one or the only thing that is contributing to these things, but it's definitely a factor and we know that. And so, how can we intervene and help support? And how can we decrease stressful pregnancy? How can we decrease birth interventions, improve birth outcomes, etc.? So, unfortunately, our country has become very medicalized in its approach to birth. And our country has number one emergency care, and that's fantastic. And I'm very grateful for that. But unfortunately, when it comes to birth outcomes, we actually rank last for birth outcomes. And it's just shocking because America spends $100 billion a year on birth. In America, 1 in 3 women have a C-section, where the World Health Organization recommends 10 to 15% are probably medically necessary. for true medical emergency. 31% of women are induced, and 1 in 7 women experience postpartum depression or mood disorder and postpartum anxiety. Another thing is the fertility aspect. And so the fertility and the struggles with infertility has gone from a $7.9 billion industry in 2022 to a $16.8 billion industry in 2028. So that's the trajectory in which it's to grow on. And I don't want to invalidate individuals' struggles with infertility because it's a very real struggle. But how are we contributing in whether that be our food system, our environmental stress, our mental and emotional stress as a culture that further like stimulates and pushes the idea of go, go, go? And then also physical stressors on our bodies. And so, how can we get out of the body's way so that the body is able to optimally do its job and then give it the support that it needs, but really ultimately giving it the optimal environment and then intervening when necessary? So what we're seeing is, unfortunately, there's this cascade, and we're seeing that what's called the perfect storm is happening. And so we're seeing higher levels than ever of this physical stress, mental and emotional stress, and environmental stress on kiddos. And that's why we're seeing higher than ever rates of sensory processing, ADHD, emotional stability, or emotional processing or regulating. We're seeing all these things, sleep disturbances, a lot of gut, a lot of GI stuff. And so we're seeing all these things and at a higher and higher rate. And so we're saying, well, what can be contributing, or how can we decrease this? And it comes back a lot to saying, how can we support mom throughout pregnancy so that we can help support baby? And so if we can help support mom, we can only work to try to improve these outcomes. And so, what we focus on is focusing on empowerment and knowledge for moms. And so, oftentimes, first time moms will say that they don't even know where to start. And so, then they get input and advice and unsolicited advice oftentimes. And everyone wants to tell their bad birth story. But a lot of times, what happens is we really have to just start from a point of empowering and educating, because we've become so removed from the birthing process. Whereas, when you're familiar with it, or it can feel more empowering versus feeling scary and the fear of the unknown. And especially when the only depiction of birth that most people have seen, unless you've been to a birth that has been a very successful and healthy birth, versus a more traumatic. Not to say that's not successful, because a happy, healthy baby is the definition of success, but maybe a like smooth delivery. Unless you've seen that, your depiction or your idea of what birth is has been mainly developed by what you've been exposed to. And that's a combination of potentially seeing birth in a movie where they're screaming, or potentially family members or friends telling their bad birth stories. And so it becomes this instilling a spirit of fear versus saying that women have been giving birth for all of eternity. It's why the human race exists. And the body is developed and designed to do that. It's something that your body is uniquely equipped for and has all of the tools. There's nothing that your body lacks and needs to be added to your body for your body to be able to successfully deliver. And so it's really something where when you recognize you intuitively have all of what it takes, you can move from a position of empowerment versus of fear and anxiety, etc. And so, really, there's a saying that birth is 80% mental and 20% physical, because the mental aspect of it cannot be overlooked. If we're speaking words of fear and of anxiety versus speaking words of empowerment, of strength, and of encouragement, our body directly feeds that. So the mental and emotional and the physical are intertwined in all areas of our life, but especially in something like birth. And so, really, ultimately, what's most important is that we're educating women on how the body works, how their body is designed, and how to properly equip yourself with tools and resources so that you feel like you are set up for success and you feel empowered. And for everyone, that's different. But for you to understand that there are lots of options out there and so many different things that you can decide what is best for you and for your baby and for your family. And so when it comes to the physical surrender, mental and emotional component is big. One of the things that I have anecdotally had heard of people that have had success with have been things like hypnobirthing or even the like Christian mantras or Christian hypnobirthing. And I haven't personally used those, but a lot of it is the mental affirmations and the component that you can feel the empowerment and the knowledge, etc. Another way to do that is through great birthing classes or birthing providers or birth educators, and really just equipping yourself with the knowledge so you're able to make informed decisions for what's right for you. The other thing is preparing our body starts even before conception. And so, especially, the fact that is our body stores things physically and emotionally, and then also the environmental or the chemical or the toxic stress. We want to focus on saying, how can we support our bodies and move from a position of being regulated versus then all of a sudden, when you are pregnant, saying, okay, I want to make modifications because it's also when your body is going to be going through so many changes that that's also a form essentially of stress. And so, how can we be implementing these things on how to properly take care of our body or prioritize our body? I talk a lot about the fact that we're constantly pushing the gas pedal, which is our stress response, and the brake pedal is relaxation. And a lot of things in our life are just naturally gas pedal oriented. So, going to work, driving, being on a schedule, tasks to do, stimulation, whether that be through lights or music or noise, all of these things, they all push the gas pedal. Our to do lists are heavy gas pedal. It's more, 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 do more, push more. And so really the key is finding things where you intentionally push the brake pedal and incorporating that in our to-do list so that we throughout our days and throughout our weeks we're finding space to intentionally push the brake pedal. Chiropractic adjustments are one of the ways to do that, but it's really saying incorporating that healthy lifestyle prior to conception because it's really a gradual shift and a gradual change, and it's not something that happens overnight. And so if you're implementing these things to help give your body the support, it's going to go a long way so that when you find out that you are pregnant, you don't feel like you have to totally 180 your whole lifestyle because that's a lot in addition to first trimester, maybe feeling nauseous and feeling extra tired, etc. And so really thinking 3 to 6 months ahead of when you're wanting to conceive and taking an inventory of different areas in your life and maybe where you might want to make improvements. Now, the other thing is community and finding your circle. This is so important, whether it be in the and throughout pregnancy and birth, or just in general in life. One of the things we notice is that humans are designed for connection. And when we start to feel our most lonely or we feel isolated, that's when we notice higher rates of anxiety and depression, etc. And so really, especially in something like pregnancy, when the to our first point of saying empowering and educating, but in something that can feel very daunting and very scary, are you surrounding people who are going through a similar experience? Are you surrounding people who understand what you're going through? Are you surrounded by people who are there and supporting you when you're having a hard day or you're having a bad day or you need extra support? And that's exactly what you should be able to do is reach out and say, hey, I need a little extra support today. And you have the support of the community to give into you and to pour into you. And so, are you surrounding yourself with that kind of community? Because that can be friends, that can be family, that can be other providers. Finding providers that align with the birth vision that you want for your ultimate birth plan, then also finding family and friends who can share their experiences and, like I touched on before, share more positive experiences and birth stories, and so that you're filling your mind with positivity and encouragement, but also feeling like you have that community and that support and that you are not in it alone and that women have been delivering babies for the millennia, eternity. And so when you can feel like you're in a community and you're not alone, oftentimes what the scariest is the fear of the unknown. And so what creates the most anxiety is the fear of the future, especially when that's unknown. And so what we want to do to decrease anxiety or fear of the future, we want to be able to equip ourselves with the most knowledge on what to expect or what is to come, or the people who can facilitate and support us, so that we feel like we can move into that with ease. And so find your circle, find family, find friends, maybe find moms groups, even ones that are pregnant, or maybe even new moms that can even just share their recent experiences. But then your birth providers are going to be a big one, and finding the right team that makes you feel supported and equipped, and so that you feel like moving into the labor and delivery, you feel equipped with the right team and the support that you need. Because that's going to really help you also feel at ease when you feel like you have a team there to support you. And so finding providers, finding a birth plan, etc., are all fantastic things. Now, ultimately, we talked about nervous system regulation. The most important thing that we can do is we can move from a place of ease, or resting, digesting, regulating, versus a place of stress and anxiety. When we're in stress and anxiety in our brain, we move from the amygdala. The amygdala is our emotion center, it's our stress center. And so oftentimes this is when we're emotionally reactive or responsive, or we're in high anxiety or high stress, whereas our prefrontal cortex is logic and reasoning, etc. And so what we want to do is, by balancing and regulating your nervous system, you can move out of the stress response. And that's why we want to equip ourselves. We want to support ourselves with community, but then we also want to do something like chiropractic so that we can support our bodies in regulating, so that we're able to make logical, rational decisions. We're not moving from a place of fear or of anxiety. And so that is why, one of the reasons why nervous system regulation makes such an important impact. In addition to the fact that baby is directly related, or definite or directly experiencing mom's maternal stress levels through cortisol, and then also through co-regulation. And so mom can help set baby up by decreasing her stress levels. She can help set herself up by help prioritize getting out of that stress response into that logic and that reason, so that you can really equip yourself. And then the final thing is, from chiropractic in throughout a birth process, is one of the things we get to do is get to keep mom as comfortable as possible. And the other thing we get to do is we get to help optimize labor and delivery by keeping everything in proper alignment. And so that goes to our other point of birth outcomes and birth interventions, etc. By keeping the body in proper alignment, by keeping the body moving, etc. We want to support mom so that we can optimize labor and delivery for the best outcomes, because we know that that not only helps mom, but that also helps baby in the long run. So those are some of the ways that nervous system-based chiropractic care can help. Those are some of the ways you can help support and empower yourself throughout the pregnancy journey. I know there's lots of information. So find somebody who aligns with your ideas or your beliefs, and how you envision your birth. And then you can dive into all that there is in those areas. And there's lots of resources. There's no shortage of resources. Just find your community. We look forward to seeing you and supporting you throughout your pregnancy at Sunlight Chiropractic.